Thank you for joining us on this 20th anniversary of the attacks on September the 11th, 2001. Today, we honor, remember, and pay tribute to those who lost their lives on that day, including more than 400 first responders, and all of those who have died afterward from illnesses and wars related to the 9/11 attacks. I would also like to thank the men and women of the United States military for their service and the sacrifices they made and continue to make so that you and I can experience the very freedoms that unite us here today as one people. I would like to take a moment to thank the Newport News Williamsburg Airport for hosting the event, as well as our sponsors, the Newport News Police Foundation and Huntington Ingalls. I would also like to recognize a few special guests who have joined us today. Delegate Shelley Simmons. Delegate Marcia Price. Mayor Price. Sheriff Gabe Morgan. Councilwoman Sharon Scott. Dr. Sandra Cherry, Vice Mayor. City Manager Cindy Rolfe. Assistant City Manager Bo Clayton. Assistant City Manager Alan Archer. President of the Police Foundation, Rob Coleman. And Director of Human Resources, Karen Witherspoon. I would now like to introduce Rob Coleman, Vice Chair of the Peninsula Airport Commission, who has some welcome remarks.
Good morning, everyone. On behalf of the Peninsula Airport Commission and the staff, I want to welcome you to Newport News Williamsburg International Airport as we observe and remember the events that happened on September 11th, 2001. I think as each and every one of you here, I have over the past week or so reflected on where I was on September 11th, 2001. And I think that each and every one of us can remember that, have that memory very vividly in our minds. And as the captain was saying, we're here to remember those souls that lost their lives on September 11th, and also the sacrifices that have been made by our public safety and our military. But I also want to remember the days that followed September 11th and how we came together as a country. And political affiliations no longer matter. It didn't matter what part of the country you were from. We came together. And that is the greatest strength, I believe, of our country and our citizens, is that when one of us or a few of us come under distress or crisis, we all come together to pick each other up. And I think that's what we're remembering to do here today, is remember that feeling about what our real true core foundation is in this country. So once again, welcome. Thank you for being here today, and God bless.
I would also like to recognize State Representative Monty Mason. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the presentation of colors by the Newport News Public Safety Color Guard, followed by the singing of the National Anthem by Brianna, Jean, and the Newport News Pipes and Drums Band.
Left. Honor guard. Report. Detail. Halt. Left. Left. Reset. On.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof to the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Order. Order. Order.
I now invite Newport News Police Department Chaplain Walter Satchel to deliver the invocation.
Good morning. Let's go to the Lord in prayer. Father, today we come before you with heavy hearts as we remember the events of 9/11/2001. 20 years ago today, our country was attacked, and on that day, 2,976 people from 93 nations lost their lives in New York, at the Pentagon, and on Flight 93 in a field in Pennsylvania. We remember the innocent who lost their lives, and we pay tribute to those who gave their lives so that others might live. We saw ordinary citizens rising to the occasion and responding with extraordinary acts of heroism. We saw our first responders police, fire, EMS, construction crews come to assist in the recovery of bodies and survivors. We saw many who were covered with smoke, overcome by heat from the fires, breathing dust from the collapsed buildings, some contracting cancer, lung disease, and as a result, some losing their lives many years later. Today we pause to remember that moment of horror and pray for those left scarred by these terrible events. We remember the first time we heard the news. We recall the first time we saw those images. And we remember the way our thoughts and prayers were for those families who lost loved ones. Father, help our country come today again like we did when 9/11 occurred. We were all Americans then, working towards a common goal of protecting our country. Our common goal now remains the same, to make it the land of the free and the home of the brave. It does not matter your color, religion, sex, political party, or your title. Lord, grant us peace. Amen.
Thank you, Chaplain. Newport News Mayor McKinley Price will now read the proclamation.
Good morning. I want to thank you, Chaplain Satchel, for your moving invocation, and Brianna Jean for your beautiful rendition of the national anthem. And thank you to the Newport News Police Foundation and Huntington Ingalls Industries for hosting this remembrance ceremony. On September the 11th, 2001, I had just walked into my dental office and saw my staff crowded around the television. We watched together in stunned and confused silence. When the first tower fell, I remember saying, "That can't happen. Buildings that huge are not supposed to fall." On that day, we all knew that our world would never be the same, and we vowed to never forget. To never forget nearly 3,000 innocent lives lost, or 6,000 who were injured, and the 400 first responders who paid the ultimate sacrifice, or the countless others who continue to suffer emotionally, mentally, and physically. I will never forget the brave first responders, the military personnel, and civilians who ran into danger to rescue those who were trapped. Many lives were saved because of the courage and sacrifice that was shown on September the 11th. 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verses 8 through 9 says, "We are hard pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair, persecuted, but not abandoned, struck down, but not destroyed." The terrorist attacks of 9/11 did not destroy us. Even though our hearts were broken and we were united in ways I had never experienced before. We grieved together. We prayed together. We rebuilt together. September the 11th, 2001 set the standard for how we must come together during our darkest days. These can be large acts of unity, like the Newport News firefighters who recently spent time in Florida to locate missing residents after the Surfside condo collapse, to smaller ones, such as donating food to help those impacted by Hurricane Ida, or by giving blood. This spirit to serve is what makes our country so beautiful. While we commemorate 9/11 today, this anniversary event is more poignant because after 20 years, the United States military no longer has a presence in Afghanistan. Virginia is one of the states charged with receiving Afghan evacuees being resettled in the United States. These are individuals who put themselves and their families at great risk to stand by our troops and translators and partners. There are also children and families desperate to live safely without fear of death or prosecution or persecution, and women who don't want to go back to living in shadows. I am honored that some of these individuals are relocating in Newport News. And I ask that as we commemorate this anniversary, we remember the compassion we showed one another, even strangers, in the ways in which this country stood together. Let us demonstrate this same spirit of community to welcome newcomers to our region. We must also remember the hard work and sacrifices of our first responders. And I commend the brave men and women of Newport News Police, Fire, and Sheriff's Departments for the dedicated and compassionate ways they serve our city and our residents. And for that, I thank you. Romans 12, chapter 21 says, "Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good." We saw this in the days and months after September 11th, and we continue to see it today. Heroes willing to lay down their lives for others, those going the extra mile to help their fellow man, and individuals committed to uplifting our community. We must maintain this spirit of togetherness and unity as we deal with life's sorrows and challenges, including the current coronavirus pandemic. Look out for one another, remain patient and kind, and lead a life of service. Let us remember the past, the lives lost, and the sacrifices made, and commit to making the future better for all. May God bless America, and may we never forget. Thank you. I now have the distinct honor of reading the proclamation in honor of Patriot Day. Whereas by a joint resolution approved December the 18th, 2001, Congress designated September the 11th of each year as Patriot Day in honor of the individuals who lost their lives on September the 11th, 2001. And whereas few events in history have shaped our nation and its citizens as the unprecedented attacks on American soil that Tuesday in 2001. And whereas the Newport News Police Department, the Newport News Fire Department, the Newport News Sheriff's Department, and the City of Newport News on this day honor the nearly 3,000 innocent lives taken from us on September the 11th, and all of those who so nobly aided their fellow citizens in America's time of need. We rededicate ourselves to the ideals that define our country and unite us as one. And whereas we pay tribute to the men and women who perished and those who continue to suffer and reflect on the bravery and courage of our police, fire, emergency, civilian, and military first responders for their quick and selfless action. And whereas it is also important to remember the countless families who were forever changed by the loss of a loved one because of these horrendous attacks. And whereas the honor and remembrance ceremony on this day, September 11, 2021, is planned for all citizens in the city of Newport News. Now, therefore, I, McKinley L. Price, Mayor of the City of Newport News, do hereby proclaim September the 11th, 2021 as Patriot Day in the City of Newport News and urge the citizens of Newport News to join the Newport News Police Department, the Newport News Fire Department, and the Newport News Sheriff's Office in supporting Patriots Day. Thank you.
We will now have the reading of the timeline by Aaron Wiesner of Piedmont Airlines and the presentation of wreaths. Please observe a moment of silence as Mr. Wiesner reads the timeline.
Good morning. On September 11th, 2001, at 8:46 a.m., hijackers aboard American Airlines Flight 11 crashed into floors 93 to 99 of the North Tower of the World Trade Center in New York City, killing everyone aboard and hundreds inside the building. 57 minutes later, hijackers aboard United Airlines Flight 175 crashed into floors 65 through 85 of the World Trade Center, killing everyone aboard and hundreds inside the building. On September 11th, 2001, at 9:37 a.m., hijackers aboard American Airlines Flight 77 crashed the plane into the western facade of the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., killing 59 aboard the plane and 125 military and civilian personnel inside the building. On September 11th, at approximately 10:07 a.m., hijackers on United Airlines Flight 93 crashed the plane into a field in Somerset County, Pennsylvania, killing all 40 passengers and the crew aboard.
We will now have opening remarks by Newport News Fire Chief Jeff Johnson.
Good morning. It's hard to believe it's been 20 years. And you look back, I'll be honest with you, 20 years ago I didn't have to wear these. I don't remember anniversary dates very well, birthdays, other things that are really important to families. Sometimes it's difficult to remember those. But I remember where I was at the moment the first trade tower was struck. I remember very vividly the comments from commentators and then seeing fire and police rush that way and then seeing the next plane hit and the way the events played out that day, I can remember almost the entire day. I'll never forget, later that evening, I was at work that day, so I was with my brothers and sisters in the firehouse watching this unfold. Later that evening, I had a fire with another company, and the company officer was a Vietnam veteran, one of the best officers I ever worked with. And he walked up to me, and it didn't resonate at the moment, but it does so much now, and poked me in the chest and said, "Today was your Pearl Harbor. Today was our Vietnam. Today is your day." And it resonates so much today. 20 years ago today, 2,976 people, Americans, perished in the terrorist attack. 343 firefighters were lost, 23 police officers were lost, 37 Port Authority officers, all lost in the buildings trying to save civilians. Battalion Chief Joe Pfeiffer with FDNY was actually on a routine call. It was a gas leak. Him and his companies, they were down by the river, and they hear this plane coming over. And he says it was very vivid because we hear planes all the time, but this one was much louder. And he looked up and saw the plane strike the Trade Center. He commanded that event. There was a lot of tragedy for him personally, not only being the first in commander and seeing the events begin to unfold, but as his brother, Ray Pfeiffer, who was a company officer, walked into the lobby with his engine company. He told him, "Good luck, go save him." And it was the last he ever saw of his brother. His brother was lost in the collapse. Many years now have passed, and Joe Pfeiffer has been very involved in the community out there and talking about 9/11. One of the things that I think that really struck me listening to some of the things he said was the legacy of 9/11 is not sorrow or tragedy, but the sacrifice and bravery shown by people's efforts. A few of those people, Captain Paddy Brown of Ladder Company 3, he was working his way up the towers, and he got the command from BC Pfeiffer, evacuate the building, get out. It's untenable. Now, Paddy Brown, I did not know him, but those that know him have been very vocal over the years of his experience. He was a Marine. He was a Marine. And in the Marine voice and the company officer commander voice, he says, "Command, this is Officer Ladder 3. I refuse the order. I'm on the 44th floor. I've got too many injured people. We're not leaving them." Everyone said that was Paddy. Captain Jay Jonas of Ladder 6, him and his company was working the stairs. As most know, the elevators were untenable, not operational. Most firefighters, police, EMS were working their way up the stairs. Ladder 6 reached the 27th floor, and they started to hear this large rumble, and the building began to vibrate. Captain Jonas told one of his firefighters, "Go check this window. I'm going to check this one, each side of the building. Let's meet back." Captain Jonas said, "All I could see was just a cloud." His firefighter came back and said, "I think the building's gone." They began working their way down the floor. He said, "That's it. We've got to go back down. If that building went down, this one can go down." As they're working their way down, they come to the 20th floor, pause for a second, and they meet an older African-American lady sitting in a chair, gasping for breath. Her name is Josephine Harris. Josephine said, "Please keep going. I'm older, I can't make it. You go down, save yourselves, help whoever else you can." Captain Jonas and his crew said, "You're one of us now. You're going with us." They carried her all the way down. They reached about the 4th floor and the building began to collapse. The building collapsed all around him. Captain Jonas said, "All I could think was, my men are gone. Josephine's gone. We've lost so many people." He was still alive and wondering why. Slowly, one by one, they began to call out. The captain was calling for his company, and everyone was responding. And oh, by the way, the squeaky older lady's voice, "I'm here too." She was with them. The bond that day goes beyond normal bonds. When Josephine passed away, it was her wish that Captain Jonas and his crew were pallbearers. The Chief of Department, Pete Gansey, he was actually in the basement of the South Tower, and it collapsed. He survived it. Some of his command staff did, other command staff did not. He ordered his command staff that did survive it, get out of the building, get a few blocks away, reestablish command. I'm going to stay here and begin evacuation operations, and my staff, our firefighters, get all the civilians that we can. Chief Gansey died standing in between the two buildings, directing rescue operations and evacuating his staff. This has continued. There's been continued losses since that day, as many have noted, between the Trade Center illnesses. As of September 6th of 2021, over 250 FDNY firefighters have died from cancer and other related causes to it. It continues to affect, which is why it's so important for us to continue to remember this event and support those members. Looking back, I think B.C. Pfeiffer was right. The legacy of 9/11 is not sorrow or tragedy, but the sacrifice and bravery that were shown by people. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. We will now have remarks by Newport News Sheriff Gabe Morgan.
Good morning. Thank you for allowing me the honor of addressing you on this solemn anniversary of September 11th attack on our country. It's one thing to remember. It's one thing to forget, not forget. But it's another thing to ensure that it never happens again. This attack is and always will be personal to me. It was an attack on the city where I grew up that resulted in personal loss. That day, much like today, the sun was shining. It was bright. Wasn't a cloud in the sky. At 8:46, an American airline loaded with over 20,000 gallons of fuel crashed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center. That plane impacted on approximately the 80th floor, Cantor Fitzgerald floor. Like most people watching this tragedy unfold, I thought it was unfortunate. It was an unfortunate accident. Then approximately 18 minutes later, at 9:03, a United Airlines appeared to deliberately fly into the South Tower. That airline impacted on the 60th floor. As most watched in disbelief, at 9:45, a third plane crashed into the west wing of the Pentagon. It was clear. We were under attack. At approximately 10:10, a fourth plane that was hijacked, and the passengers and the crew fought back, and that airliner crashed in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. It is believed that that plane's target was the U.S. Capitol. September 11th, 2001 dramatically changed America forever. A total of 2,996 people were killed in that attack, including 19 terrorists aboard 4 airliners. Citizens from 78 countries died in New York, Washington, and Pennsylvania. We went to war with Afghanistan because the Taliban refused to turn over Osama bin Laden, who was the mastermind of the attack. We created the Department of Homeland Security. We created a National Counterterrorism Center. We took down the walls between the international and domestic intelligence and law enforcement agencies. We didn't talk to each other back then. We do now. We created the Transportation Safety Administration, better known as TSA. We created a no-fly list. As a result of the aforementioned initiatives, it is much harder for foreign terrorist organizations to carry out a 9/11 style attack today. 20 years ago, Al-Qaeda presented our greatest threat. Today, homegrown extremists prone to violence is our greatest threat. These extremists are driven by hate, extreme ideology, and anti-government beliefs fueled by false narratives. On the international front, the so-called lone wolf presents our greatest threat. That person may be your neighbor that attaches to an extremist terrorist group and carries out an attack in the name of that group without ever communicating with that group. On the domestic front, white supremacy and anti-government groups present our greatest challenges. In both scenarios, we are asking for the public's help in ensuring that we do not have a repeat of 9/11 or any terrorist act. If you see something, we ask that you say something. Every nugget of information that we feed into a fusion center, maybe that is a piece of the puzzle that stopped the next attack. If your son is making small bomb-like objects and it seems like he's being obsessed with that, we need you to say something. If your uncle seems overly obsessed with saying someone needs to kill blank, we need to know. We cannot do it alone. We have to get this right 100% of the time. And the bad guys only have to get it right once. Without each and every one of your help, we could remember, we could not forget, but we could allow it to happen again. In closing, as we remember all who died on that dreadful day and the brave military that served for more than 20 years, I want to especially call your attention, as Chief Johnson did, to the bravery of the 343 firefighters and paramedics, the 23 New York City and 37 Port Authority police officers that rushed into a burning and collapsing building in an attempt to save people they didn't even know. They lived up to their solemn oath of office, and they gave the full measure. May their memories and the memories of the Capitol police officers who served, may their memories and the memories of the Capitol police officer serve as a guiding light for first responders, and may they rest in peace.
Thank you, Sheriff Morgan. We will now have remarks by Newport News Chief of Police, Steve Drew.
Good morning. First of all, thank you for allowing us to use this beautiful venue. Thank you for all of you that took the time to show up here today and come here today. It's important. As you've heard from many of our speakers today about how important it is that we don't forget. Thank you for coming to sing the national anthem. You know, with several chaplains here, I'll mess it up if I try to do the verse, but it's okay. No greater love than someone that will lay down their life for another. You know, 20 years ago, we all remember what we were doing that day, or those that were with us, those that were alive. We don't remember so much the day before. Last week, I got to sit with some of the young adult police commissioners, high school students that weren't even alive. And we just kind of came together and we just had a group discussion. You got to meet some of them. They greeted you as you walked through the doors today. And to watch their faces, we started out by watching sort of the timeline that was read and what happened. And really what I wanted to hear, maybe more see, is their reaction. And as they watch it, I saw some with tears, I saw some with jump back and put their head down, and then we just kind of discussed how they felt and what they saw. People helping each other and people running away from this massive cloud of dust. Remember the massive cloud of dust? I think it was Cameron who's going to Woodside this year. I think it was Cameron that talked about the red fire truck that went the opposite direction. Towards the cloud. And we've already heard from our speakers about the men and women who rushed up those stairs and trying to save other people and ultimately gave their life. And we hear about stories of those that still die from illnesses that caused from cleaning up, where now there stands two beautiful, beautiful memorials with names etched in marble to ensure that we never forget those images we see. I appreciate all those that have come today to speak. Mayor Price, my brothers Jeff and Gabe, thank you. I also appreciate the military men and women that are here, that have served, and that also serve in the police and fire department and sheriff's department. I'll try to get through this short story, and it is not without respect and permission that I share it with you. Everyone was affected differently. We heard Mayor Price talk about his office, how people gathered around and watched what was happening. Others watching the scroll across the bottom of our TV screens. As a young sergeant being called by my lieutenant, telling me to report here, and I didn't know, what am I supposed to do? I don't know. Just be there. What was happening? What was happening to our country was something that I had never seen before. You know, you read about Pearl Harbor, you read about other things that have happened, but I didn't live that. I read it in a book. people today have already talked about personal loss that they had. Many of us who knew individuals who worked in other locations. The towers that fell and the Pentagon that was struck in the field in Pennsylvania. What happened the next day? 24 hours later, a member of the United States Navy was called to duty to a land I don't think he'd ever been before. If you remember, I'm going to get it wrong, but there was a movie years ago, I think it was called Lone Survivor, where 4 or 5 individuals were dropped in Afghanistan and reconnaissance mission. They came under attack. Only one would survive. But 2 helicopters would take off from an Air Force base overseas to go rescue our 4 or 5 soldiers that were behind enemy lines. 2 helicopters, and I'm not sure, maybe 20 men on each one. But as they went to rescue our soldiers that were behind enemy lines, one of the helicopters was struck with a surface-to-air missile. Anyway, the helicopter was struck by rocket fire, and everyone on board perished. The helicopter went down. The other helicopter with, let's say, 20 men, turned around and went back because it was too dangerous. And what I'm told is they all wanted to continue. To recover and find their American brothers, their soldiers. Now, I've been here almost 3.5 years. And you think you know some people you work with. But it wasn't for about 2 years into my being the chief here that Chief Grinstead told me he was the one on that helicopter. He did his time in the Navy. He's the assistant chief of our department. And he has this wooden helicopter. And it wasn't really until I asked, what is that helicopter in your office? And he told me this story. And he asked the questions as I sat and just listened. You know, why wasn't it my chopper that was hit? I'm sure that men and women who lived through 9/11 asked the question, why did I make it? Why did my brothers and sisters get out? Why did she make it and he make it and he didn't and she didn't? And I have those conversations with Mike a lot. But I asked him one question after I sat in awe. Would you do it again? Knowing what you know now, would you do it again? Would you get on that helicopter? Would you enlist? Would you serve? Would you go up? Would you do it again? And his answer was, without hesitation, yes. Because that's what we do. I would submit to you, God forbid another attack, but if you could go back and ask all those that lost their lives and those that survived, would you do it again? I believe everyone would say yes. Because that's what service is all about. Caring for one another. You heard Mayor Price speak about it. The representative from the airline speak about it. Jeff and Gabe both. Our men and women that serve overseas and here, that's what we do. And that is why this day impacts so many people in so many different ways. People still put on this uniform and serve our citizens across the country in our interest overseas. I would be remiss if I didn't mention the 13 men and women who lost their lives as we withdrew our troops from Afghanistan. Again, serving other individuals, protecting other individuals to bring them home. I am sure there will be other tragedies that we face. But America's greatest resolve is not the technology and equipment that we have. It is all its people, regardless of race or color or creed. This is a hard day, but one that deserves our remembrance. And it means the world to me that each of you took time to be here today. But I am humbled. I am humbled by the men and women, soldiers and their family, young children go into the profession of serving others. And we haven't even mentioned the nurses in the field that take care of people, men or women. It is truly humbling, and it is truly an honor. The best asset we have in this country is our people, each other. Thank you for letting me speak today. Thank you for coming today. Thank you for the men and women who wear this uniform, police, fire, sheriff's office, first responders, paramedics, or military, those that have served, those that currently are, those that are in training academies, and those that are filling out applications. And I want to thank the young people, you guys, for coming and having a conversation with me to hear your perspective. You all matter. And I hope, and in my prayer, that we never, ever forget what happened this day 20 years ago. May God bless all of us in this wonderful country.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing for the reading of the Fireman's Prayer by Chaplain Keith Robertson.
Good morning, everyone. For the recitation of this prayer, I invite everyone within the sound of my voice, to please join me in its reading and speaking, if you're so led to do. When I am called to duty, God, wherever flames may rage, give me strength to save a life, whatever its age. Help me to embrace a little child before it's too late, or to save an older person from the horror of that fate. Enable me to be alert, to hear the weakest shout, and quickly and efficiently to put the fire out. I want to fill my calling and to give the best in me, to guard my neighbor and protect their property. And if according to your will, I must lose my life, bless with your protecting hand my loving family from strife. Thank you.
The honor guard will now perform the tolling of the bells.
Good morning. Tolling of the bell, 555. Long before telephones and radios, fire departments used the telegraph to communicate. When the handle was pulled on the once familiar red fire alarm boxes, found on nearly every street corner of America, a special code was transmitted to every fire station. When the firefighter died in the line of duty, the fire alarm officers would tap out a special signal. That signal was 5 measured dashes, then a pause, then 5 measured dashes, another pause, then 5 more dashes. This became universally known as tolling of the bell and was broadcast over all telegraph fire alarm circuits. This signal was a sign of honor and respect for all firefighters who had made the ultimate sacrifice and has become a time-honored tradition.
Half line. Ready, aim, fire. Ready, aim, fire. Ready, aim, fire. Half left. Precinct.
Please remain standing for the retirement of colors, followed by the benediction by Chaplain Robertson.
Layer, detail, mark time, mark. Layer, detail, mark. Layer, layer. Retreat, color. Right, right. Forward, forward. Lay, 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 right. Lay, 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 right. Lay, 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 right.
I'd like to take a brief moment once again to just thank everyone for joining us here today, everyone both in person here in the room with us, as well as many of you attending with us today online. Your presence with us is both an honor and greatly appreciated. And now for the beginning of our benediction, I ask that everyone please join me for a few moments of communal silent reverence. Let us begin. May all of us remember with love and compassion this day. May we grieve with those who still mourn and share memories with those who cannot forget. May we draw strength from those who bravely responded and gave their lives to save others. May we stand with strangers who become neighbors that day and remember their generosity and hospitality. Above all, God, may we remember your faithfulness and learn to trust in your unfailing love. Amen.
Thank you everyone for coming. This concludes our ceremony.